Visión y Compromiso, as well as United Domestic Workers, Loud for Tomorrow, Central Valley United for Power, Center for the Race, Poverty, and the Environment, Planned Parenthood, Central Valley Partnership, and the Beale Library for the use of their facilities. Thank you very much.
And now I also want to say a thank you to the candidates for joining us. We do know that some candidates may have to leave at 6:30 due to prior engagements, but today we have Lewisgale from District 3, Pete Graff for District 2, and Kelly Cardin for District 2. And then later on, we will be having Amy Espinoza running for the County Clerk, Auditor, and Registrar of Voters joining us. The first part of tonight's forum, we'll hear candidates for Supervisor, as I just said. Okay, and then.
Yes, and just to make clear, to make sure everybody that all candidates were invited. Some of them chose not to be here for whatever reason. Okay, enough said. So let's first of all, with each candidate, you have 30 seconds to present yourselves and give us a brief introduction about you. Let's start off with Lewisgale, running for Supervisor District 3. Lewis.
Good afternoon. My name is Lewisgale. I'm a candidate for the 3rd District Board of Supervisors. For the last 21 years, I have worked just down the road at the Bakersfield Homeless Center. I manage a nonprofit corporation that serves primarily homeless families and individuals in crisis, and also another organization that serves primarily survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I have been in social justice work my entire career. I fight for people that don't have a voice in the room, and I truly hope that I get to represent District 3.
Thank you, Lewis. Let's go to District 2, Peter Graff.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here. My name is Peter Graff. I'm from Tehachapi. I've lived in Tehachapi since 1979. I've been in Kern County that whole time. Loved every second of it. I'm a prior police officer, a prior business owner, and I plan to take those two past great histories, and I plan to utilize them and benefiting the community, our community, District 2, as well as the entirety of Kern County. It's not just about my district, it's about Kern County. So that's what we need to do, is work collectively, and that's what I plan to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Cardin.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelly Cardin. I'm a candidate for the Kern County Board of Supervisors, 2nd District. I've lived in Kern County for my entire life. I'm a 3rd generation Kern County resident. My family's had a small business that I worked in since I was 7 years old. I built a career successfully out of hospitality management, culminating in I was the operations manager at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. There I've had a chance to cook for people like George Bush, Gloria Gaynor, and culminating in I cooked for Buzz Aldrin at the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and I got to organize that entire event for 4,000 people. I learned a lifetime of problem solving skills that I believe I can translate to the Board of Supervisors, and I hope very much that by the end of the night I've had the opportunity to earn your support.
Thank you. All righty, let's get right to the questions. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Questions will be posed to candidates in alternating fashion. We will start with the Board of Supervisor candidates, then move to the rapid fire questions and questions from the public. We will repeat this process again for the Registrar of Voters candidate. Now, if a candidate's name is mentioned by another, the person mentioned gets 30 seconds to respond. So let's begin with the first question for Supervisor for the Supervisor of District number 3. What are the responsibilities of a county supervisor, Lewisgale, and what are your qualifications for the job?
So my career has been about service and for making sure that systems care for people, and that when people try and access care, that it actually is available. I have worked in the county systems for a number of years, making sure that people were able to, of course, be safe, find homes, etc. On the business side, the corporation was fairly large. It had over 174 employees. It was a $12 million budget. I was responsible for multiple campuses. I grew it from an organization of less than $1 million and with only 15 employees. I would really like to bring my experience as someone that's actually done the work to the Board of Supervisors.
Let's go to District 2, Peter Graff.
So my qualifications, as I listed at the beginning in the introduction there, I have 10 years, actually 11 years as a business owner. And during those 11 years, I had to structure deals, I had to negotiate contracts, I had to write and enforce policy for my own company where I managed and trained 120 plus employees at a time. That was pretty complex since we operated out of Palmdale, Lancaster, Mojave, Tehachapi, and Bakersfield. We had significant accounts that were high value accounts like Golden Empire Transit, Castle and Cook, SA Camp. These were large accounts. And what I do is I take now my experience as a police officer for 10 years, and I take that and I put together, and I'm going to address what this county is neglecting hugely, and that is law enforcement and firefighters. We're all suffering from the neglect of our supervisors and our sheriff not properly enforcing our streets. The district attorney is not prosecuting, and the sheriff is not enforcing. These men and women who wear these badges, whether it be sheriff's deputies or firefighters, they're out there working in very dangerous situations. In situations where we would go 3 or 4 deep when I was a police officer, these people are required now to go by themselves. This is completely uncalled for, and I will not stand for it. So I plan to take those two experiences, put them together, and build a beautiful role for Eastern Kern County District 2 as well as Kern County collectively.
Thank you. District 2, Kelly Cardin.
Yeah, so in my experience, I've been responsible for 9-figure profit and loss sheets at the Reagan Library. We had a $100 million catering budget that we dealt with every year. So as far as complex numbers, I'm very comfortable with those things. Previously, I was actually a youth pastor at Las Vegas Dream Center, where I lived and worked in the inner city for about 2.5 years in the projects. I have experience helping people move in those kinds of situations and the more successful ones. I've seen here in Kern County, especially in the rural communities in southeastern Kern throughout the 2nd District, where the county has really left us behind. I was driving through Boron yesterday, and it looks like it's a town that time forgot. That unfortunately, that's been played over and over again within our smaller towns in Kern County, as well as our larger cities. So what I like to do is bring my background in being an efficiency expert and making sure that we're touching all of the issues that are currently being failed on by the current administration of the Board of Supervisors.
Well, thank you guys. And going into the second question, I do want to urge everyone to please speak a little bit slowly because we do have simultaneous interpretation happening at the same time. So please just keep that in mind when answering the questions. For our second question, we want to ask, what programs will you guys invest in for the youth? Oh, sorry about that. We'll start with District 2, Pete Graff.
Programs for the children, specifically, I'm running for District 2, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to care about the entirety of Kern County. I mean, this is we all want to in this together, regardless of where we live, right? So, I mean, what we need to do is, and I'll give an example, North Edwards, out in District 2, they have these solar fields that are being built. And these solar fields are absolutely destroying the eco in the area. They're ripping down 100-year-old Joshua trees, getting rid of vegetation, creating dust storms. There's an uptick in valley fever around these places where these people actually live. It's absolutely disgusting that these companies are getting away with this, but have a huge monetary gain at our constituents' expense. And that's unfair to them. So what I plan to do when these companies plan to come into our county, I plan to incentivize them and ask them, what are you going to do for my citizens? We need something in return. We need parks, we need recreation centers, we need splash pools, we need libraries, and we need to continue with that. I'm sorry, I saw time. Thank you.
And next, going to District 2, Kelly Cardin.
Yeah, so I think specifically we need to work on our libraries. It is ridiculous that small communities in the middle of the desert don't have 5-day services at their libraries. Nowadays, kids use the libraries to access the internet so they can do their schoolwork. People in smaller communities access libraries to get out of the 110-degree weather that we regularly have. We also need to make sure we're investing in parks so that kids have somewhere to go. Every memory that I have from my childhood happens at the parks in Roseman. And I want to make sure that my children, my oldest son's actually here in the room today. I want to make sure that they have the same opportunities that I had to see us be successful, to see resources for them. I'd also would like to see us expand programs for job training amongst high school students so that when they graduate high school, they don't feel as if they're trapped. I think leaving a clear path forward for as many Kern County citizens as possible has to be a priority for our Board of Supervisors.
And then next, Lewisgale of District 3.
So we've had some unfortunate consolidations in our county over the last several years. Park and Rec was sistered up with General Services. And because of that, you do not have professionals that are dedicated to Parks and Recreation. And so you don't have youth programming anymore. There's nothing going on. There's not the athletic programs. There's not the arts programs for kids. We need to get back to having a standalone department because it's incredibly important that we have places for our kids to participate and just act as a community, because right now we're failing there.
Thank you. Question number 3, candidates, how will you ensure equitable health resources are provided to most impacted communities, such as low income, rural, Black, Indigenous, and people of color? Peter Graff.
Jose, if you could you repeat that? There was a lot of feedback. I'm sorry.
How will you ensure equitable health resources are provided to most impacted communities, such as low income, rural, Black, Indigenous, people of color?
You know, the low income aspect and getting involved with them is imperative. And we're dealing with that, like I brought up North Edwards and Boron. You know, there's a lot of parts of these communities that are very low income. You look at parts of some of these places absolutely are suffering because of low impact, and they don't have any resources. They don't have any options. They don't have any places to go. And this is what we need to do, is focus on what they need. They're the forgotten. These are the people that are forgotten, whether it be of a different color, whether it be of low income. These are the people that are forgotten in Muhammad. They're forgotten in Roseman. They're forgotten in North Edwards. So it's my goal to make sure as these companies build inside these areas, I make sure that I'm providing for these people. And I make sure that they have the same resources. You look at the water companies in North Edwards, these people don't have the ability to buy their water. So they have to have it trucked in. They can't even consume their water. This is one of the things I'm going to stand up and fight for. I have to fight for these people because they don't have a voice. And in these communities collectively just listed, they don't have a voice, and I'm here to be that.
Kelly Cardin.
Yeah, so one of the ways that I'd like to address those underserviced areas is by making sure that we're spending money that's raised in rural communities first. What regularly happens in small towns throughout the county is the county takes the resources they've gained and they've garnered, whether it be the solar panels or the windmills or anything else, and then they immediately plunder that into the county's general fund where it's mismanaged and misspent. I think that the priority has to be in making sure that we're investing in small communities, that as we're growing our economy, instead of chasing large corporations, that we're bringing in more doctors and dentists and other medical professionals to open businesses in Kern County, specifically in the non-English speaking areas and the indigenous areas and in the rural communities. I think by forcing the county to invest in them, that is the best way for them to take steps forward and make sure they have the healthcare needs and the other services that should be available throughout the county.
Thank you. District 3, Lewisgale.
So District 3 is largely contained close within the city. And so most residents have more access than we will say rural communities. But that being said, what we have a problem with is pure geography, typically transportation, and then personnel. We have a very hard time bringing people here. And so one of the good things that's happened through this pandemic is telemedicine has improved. Now it is not optimal. And I didn't enjoy it when my dad had a stroke and I was looking at a cardiologist on a television screen. But he got the care in Porterville because he had telemedicine. And so we need to look at new ways like that to be able to make sure that services are available if we can't get the personnel in the geography.
Thank you. For our next question, our county is facing an unprecedented number of houseless people on the streets. If elected, what will you do to get people off the streets and on the pathway to self-sustainability other than the low barrier shelters that are already operating? And we'll start with Kelly Cardin from District 2.
So yes, the homeless population is exploding here in Kern County. In my district especially, what you see regularly is mobile homes just scattered throughout the desert. It looks like there's just roving mobile home parks everywhere in Kern County. The way that we address that is understanding there's two types of homeless, those who will take help and those who won't. And focusing first on those that will take help by providing services to them, whether it be mental health treatments or drug addiction programs that can be available to them to help them move forward, job training programs. providing places for them to go. I think it was great that the county opened the navigation center on M Street so there could be wraparound services. We need more of that, and very particularly in the second district and the outlying communities around. I think that if we can address those things and then of course, making sure that we're able to enforce and cite the people who are just showing up on people's yards and people's property in the middle of the desert. I think that by paying attention to them and working with the homeless people in Kern County, the homeless citizens, and we can help them get their best outlook.
Pete Graff from District 2.
The homeless issue is significant. What we have here is we have multiple problems within one. We have drug addiction, we have alcohol addiction, and we don't have programs for these. So what we have is multiple people going into a hole that goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And what they do is they drink themselves broke. They take drugs until they're broke. Then they steal from their family. Then they have no other resources and they have no place to go. This is how they end up on the streets. What we need to do is source the problem. Why are they there? And that is the addictions. We need to modify our programs so that these people can get adequate help. They can get adequate rehabilitation and housing while they're doing it. And the Navigation Center has brought up a great facility. My brother, who actually is a methamphetamine addict, I love him with all my heart, been trying to get him to stop for years. He's actually at the Navigation Center now. And so I know there's aspects of this stuff that works, but there's also a lot of it that's broken. So we have a lot of people who are going without resources. And that's what I plan to do. That's one of my platforms and one of my big pushes is to modify, enhance, and build drug addiction programs and facilities for the homeless, especially women and children who are displaced, and in Eastern Kern County where there's really no resources.
And Lewisgale of District 3.
So if you haven't done this work, you don't understand how the system works. There is a federal policy that's called Housing First. Housing First dictates how money can be invested to help people. So that federal policy gets passed to the state. The state accepts it. Then they pass it down to the county. Now, when it is Housing First, that means the majority of the money goes straight to someone getting a home. You can't deal with their chemical dependency. You can't deal with the mental health issues. You can't deal with untreated trauma. So it limits how things can work. We need to take back local control. So there are three things that I would strongly encourage that we do. One, inside behavioral health and recovery services, they're siloed. So if they have, if they're I only have 15 seconds, so I won't get to all three. But if someone is presenting with both issues of chemical dependency and mental health, the service teams aren't allowed to fully communicate. We have to break that down because you get incomplete plans of service. And I got to obey the timer. There's a lot to this, and I'd love to talk to you guys about it.
Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. Kern County is home to 3 immigration detention centers, 2 currently operating. If elected, how will you work with our local cities like McFarland and the city and the state to protect our immigrant communities and ensure that our county doesn't have to rely on revenue from agencies like GEO and to keep our county running? Let's begin with Lewisgale, District 3.
That's quite a question, isn't it? The detention centers evoke a lot of feelings for a lot of people. So far, to my knowledge, and I hope it is true, our law enforcement personnel are not directly cooperating with federal immigration. So that individuals that are working here in this community, living in this community, remain our neighbors. The detention facilities, I think every time that a contract comes up that comes before the Board of Supervisors, we're going to have to take a hard look at how they're run, truly how they're being staffed and how people are being cared for. Because many of the reports coming out tell us that what's happening in there is entirely insufficient.
Thank you. Peter Graff.
You know, that's a touchy issue, but I can tell you right now, when you're dealing with state and federal, and you're at the county level, there's a lot of hard ways to get hard answers. I can tell you this: at CRF, the Central Receiving Facility in Bakersfield, when somebody is detained and they do have illegal status, They're not detained based on that status alone. There has to be what's called an open charge. So if there's an open charge, then they're arrested based on that, not solely for an illegal status. But there is a referral to immigration once that arrest is made. Now, as far as dealing with the federal government, I think it's going to take personality, because they're going to hide from us. They're not going to tell us exactly what they're doing inside these facilities. They're going to hide. They're going to give us false answers. And we really don't have the power at the county level to get inside there. So it's going to be up to the supervisors to go inside there, build a relationship with these geo systems and with these federally contracted agencies, build a relationship with them, and let them know we're here to help the citizens and the people that you have detained inside. They have rights. We just want to make sure that their rights are being heard and followed. We want to make sure that everybody is being treated the same and that their rights are being followed. That's going to be the key important. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't see your sign.
Okay, Kelly Cardin.
I was listening to Pete. So this is an issue that matters to me. I'm the son of an immigrant. My mom came to America when she was 19 years old and she found her American dream. I think it's important that we protect other immigrants that they come and they're looking for theirs too. I think that there's a way that we can protect peaceful immigrants, especially peaceful migrants that are just looking for work. And I agree that we should not be working with the federal government to enforce those laws in that manner. I would like to see us actually establish a charter for Kern County so that we have room to push back against the state and the federal government, so we can say, hey, you know what? No, thank you. There's more significant issues that we need to work on than sending peaceful men and women who made stupid mistakes into jail. I think that that's just a cruel thing to do to people who just want better for their lives. I can't even imagine when my mom was 19 years old and she was married to an American serviceman and came to a whole new world, that if they would have treated her that way, that she would be a 50-year American citizen, a 40-year homeowner, and for the last 30 years, she's owned her own business. I believe the American dream should be accessible to all Americans, not just those born here.
Thank you. And you finished right on time too. Okay, now we're going to move on to our what we call the rapid fire questions. Candidates, as you see, you have set of cards there, a green one for yes, a red one for no. Now, a green card, as I said, means the green card says yes. The red card says no. I thought green meant to go. Anyway, so we're going to ask you some questions, and you just hold up your card, whether you agree with it or not, just yes or no. So we're going to just ask away. You guys ready? First question. Do you agree that abortion is a healthcare right? Raise up your card for the answer.
If elected, would you support the rising of the LGBTQIA+ pride flag? If elected, would you support the rising of the LGBTQIA+ pride flag?
3 yeses. Okay. Next question. Will you uphold California's place as a sanctuary state for immigration? Yes or no? 3 yeses.
Do you support healthcare for all?
Okay, next question. Do you support setbacks for all well near sensitive receptions, such as hospitals, schools, and homes? Do you support setbacks for oil wells near sensitive receptions, such as hospitals, schools, and homes? 3 yes.
Do you support terminating contracts between law enforcement and school districts? Do you support terminating contracts between law enforcement and school districts?
2 yes, 1 no. Next question. Do you support the expansion of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and programs throughout Kern County?
Do you support expanding funding for libraries? Do you support expanding funding for libraries?
And the final question for rapid fire. Do you support term limits for supervisors? Yes, all 3. Okay, thank you, candidates. Let's go on. This time we have some community youth questions, supervisors. Community members and youth will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please state your name, where you reside. And Cecilia, where's Cecilia? Pásale, Cecilia.
The question is going to be made by Maria Rocio. Mi nombre es María Rocío y yo soy de la comunidad de Lamón. Mi pregunta es ¿cuál es la definición de un supervisor y qué nos pueden verificar y qué poder tienen para tomar decisiones y ayudar a la gente? ¿Cuánto tiempo duran? ¿Y cuánto lugar abarca el control de su posición? That's all.
We'll start with the first one. And ma'am, could you mind saying the second one as well? And what was the role as a supervisor? The role of a supervisor, you're my boss. You're the voter. You're my constituent. You're my citizen. So I'm here for you. I'm your voice. When you can't go to the supervisors meetings and you can't stand up and speak for what your concerns are, you can come to me and I'll speak on your behalf. Be my role as a supervisor. And the second one, ma'am? I understand that. I'll answer the terms and outreach.
Okay.
There was one in between there.
¿En qué nos pueden beneficiar y qué poder tienen para tomar decisiones? ¿En qué nos pueden beneficiar y tomar decisiones?
Just like I was just saying, you're my boss. I'm going to go inside there and I'm going to represent you. My powers come collectively with 5 people with a majority vote. We all have to come together and we all have to fight for our citizens. Not everybody's going to agree on everything, so my powers are minimal as far as the other 5 people or 4 other people involved. But I will voice myself, and that's actually what I'm actually known for, is voicing myself and telling people the stuff that they don't want to hear. But I'm actually here to represent you, and that's how I'm going to benefit you. As far as the outreach, I'm going to be over the county. My district specific will be 2, but I will be out there in the entire county working with the other 4 supervisors to ensure that you as a citizen are having everything that you need as a citizen that you're entitled to, and the terms are 4 years.
Yes, so the Board of Supervisors is both the legislative and the executive branch of the county. So the stretching powers are quite broad, and we have the ability to affect funding in your neighborhoods. We have abilities to affect staffing in your neighborhoods. And most importantly, like Peter said, we are called to be the voice to you. And I always say that it's not the majority that elected officials are called to look out for. They're already the majority. It's the minority, the unheard, the unseen that we're called to represent. So as far as my outreach goes, I've committed to making 8 official stops in each population center in my district, and then additionally to that, I would make more throughout the other areas in the county. I'm also going to be available to anybody from any county to make sure that your voice is heard. If your supervisor is unwilling to meet with you, and I would meet with you very, very happily. And same, a 4-year term, and I've been supporting term limits since last May. I've only planned on running 8 years if I would.
We would be responsible for setting the budget, which directly affects the money that goes into services. Then it's the responsibility of a supervisor to make sure that those services actually work for the constituents. And when there's problems, we're supposed to get in front of that. We're supposed to have an open door so that the people that we work for can actually come talk to us. Our job is to find out where there's problems. And then once we identify them, we'll do something about it. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you're going to make people mad. I support term limits because you don't have to be afraid of keeping your job. You just need to do the work.
Hello, my name is Angel and I'm from Bakersfield. And I'm here, and I am a youth leader here with the Worthen Foundation. My question to you is, what environmentally conscious practices and policies would you implement in Kern County and halt environmental degradation?
So this goes directly to our energy sector. The energy sector in Kern County is one of the largest parts of our economy. It employs a lot of people, takes care of a lot of families, but it's also in transition. And no matter how folks feel about it, there's more votes in the rest of the state that are going to make sure that that continues to transition and diminish. There's also opportunity now. And people have different feelings about this, but carbon capture and sequestration, ways of being able to still put people to work and reduce pollution. It's definitely a way that we can keep people employed.
I'm actually a little hard to hear. Can you say that again, please? A little louder.
Okay, so my question again is, what environmentally conscious practices and policies would you implement in Kern County to halt environmental degradation?
Yeah, so specifically, let's talk about fracking. That when we look at issues that we have to see what they're actually complaining about. So like, for instance, with fracking, the complaints are evaporation ponds for the byproduct as well as deep water storage. One thing that I would invest in is to help our oil industry filter those things so they don't need those anymore. I mean, can you imagine if the evaporation pond next to your house disappeared tomorrow? That would be great. I'd like to see us continue to make those kinds of improvements that have actual effects on the economy as well as the environment. And like Lewis said, the oil may be our lifeblood right now, but it's organically shrinking. So we need to make sure that we're being as environmentally respectful as we can with that while we transition to what's ever next. And it's going to be renewable energies.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot at play here. Kern County has, two major revenues. That's agriculture and oil. And with oil, there's a lot of battle. And I know people don't, there's not a lot of big fans of it, but there's a lot of people trying to make it better for everybody. Senate Bill 1319, for example, it's one of the bills it's actually requiring to make sure that the filtration and clean air and particles are reduced by the oil that's brought in by foreign countries. And this is one thing we need to do. We need to hold our oil companies accountable for the same thing. We can go out to the ag departments. I spoke to a lot of people in the Eastern Kern County, huge ag area, as most people know. And when you're off season, a lot of the dust is blowing up and you get a lot of valley fever. There has to be a lot of accountability there. So there's going to be policies and programs that are going to be put into place that are going to hold these businesses accountable for their actions, whether it's on season or off season. Just because they're not working the field doesn't mean they're not accountable for what's occurring in the fields. So that's what we're going to make sure I'm going to do is I'm going to drop these policies to make sure, like you and your neighbors and everybody else, they're not being sick and annoyed by all the particles from oil in the air, all the. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Mi nombre es Margarita Regalado, vengo de Arvin. Nomás quería preguntarle que ahí en la ciudad de Arvin hay mucha contaminación y también tenemos problemas con el sistema cuando uno llama a la policía. Siempre hay un que pica 1, pica 2, pica 3 y ya para cuando llegan los bomberos y policías, pues ya la persona tiene algo muy grave y pues ya llegan tarde. Esa es mi pregunta para ustedes, ¿qué harían?
Ma'am, are you in the incorporated area of Arvin, the city, or are you just on the outside? In the city? Okay, they're in the city. It's hard to deal, as a supervisor, absolutely, you can go and speak to the city managers, you can go and speak to their council. And as a supervisor, you should be attending those meetings to ensure that you, as my county constituent, as well as their city constituent, is receiving all the services that you need. So that's what I would do. I would attend to make sure that I would attend those meetings and make sure you're getting the services you need. Find out why you're not getting them, and to see if there's anything at a county level that I can bring to the incorporated city that could benefit you and your family with emergency services, because nobody should be neglected that. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
So in other words, you guys cannot do nothing about it. Like this whole department, go up there and trying to fix it. Or because we had done it before. I had come to the meetings and actually they don't pay attention today. Tomorrow, I'm gonna go talk to the chief of police because that's ridiculous, you know? So that's why I came today.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And you're doing the right thing. Voice yourself. You need to be heard, because if you're not in there talking to them, they don't hear. People that go to these meetings and they will shut us down, because if they have 2 or 3 minutes and we're entitled to they are entitled those 2 or 3 minutes, how are we supposed to voice ourselves and tell them what we're grieving about in 2 minutes? That's ridiculous. So you need to go and voice yourself. And I said what I would do on my part, because it is incorporated city. They have their own council and they have their own mayor. But on your behalf, as your supervisor, I'm going to go inside there and I'm going to voice myself for you. And even if that's not even in the district or anybody else is not my district, feel free to call. I'm going to go and be a voice for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Peter's absolutely right. There is a limit to what we can do as far as directly as a county supervisor, being that you're in the city. But with that said, like Peter said, we need to make sure that we're being your advocate. It's tough when you're going and you're ignored, but they're gonna have a lot harder time ignoring us, right? You know, so you can depend on myself or the other 2 gentlemen sitting here to make sure that we're your advocates. Beyond that, we want to make sure that we're addressing funding issues for your own. Sorry, it's like loud. Addressing funding issues, what we'll do is we'll audit the tax revenues and payments that are being paid from Arvin to the county and make sure that we're paying back at least the correct amount, so at the very least, we're eliminating the excuses that they're giving you of not enough money to pay for law enforcement. Because with a $3.4 billion budget, that's a really poor excuse.
The bottom line for incorporated cities, county supervisors need to be a voice in the room for you. They need to use their influence of their office and the pressure that they can bring to individuals within that city and asking the direct questions, finding out why there's an insufficiency, and not settling for, well, that's just the way it is, right? So the job really is finding out why this resident in the county feels poorly served, and then go and finding out what you can do.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Laura Cruz y vengo de Vecinos Unidos con la Fundación Dolores Huerta. Queremos mejorías en nuestras calles. Aún no tenemos banquetas donde los niños esperan el bus, no tienen una seguridad de dónde caminar. Nos interesa mucho que estén seguros. El que quedara elegido tendría la seguridad de que se hiciera el trabajo, de ser responsables de ir a checar que lo que se mandó a hacer se haga, porque definitivamente a veces dicen que se hizo y nadie se dio cuenta que ustedes toman la responsabilidad de ir a caminar por esas calles y asegurarse que se hizo el trabajo. Regularmente también nuestras calles, vas caminando y te caes en un pozo, caes en otro, y eso provoca muchos accidentes.
Thank you for that question. That's incredibly important. Can you say which city you lived in again?
De aquí de Bakersfield.
Where?
Bakersfield.
Oh, okay. So where I live right now in Roseman, we've been fighting for repaved streets for as long as I can remember. We're finally getting them. Believe me when I say it's our smaller communities that we all recognize being the most left behind. So you can certainly count on me being an advocate for you, walking the streets with you, and seeing what you're experiencing and going back to the board and demanding action. Again, you're in a little bit of a difference because you're in Bakersfield. So we'd have to go to your city manager and we have to make sure that we're fighting for your communities. Your communities are full of taxpayers that are paying for services to be provided, and you're being ignored. And it's ridiculous that we're seeing the neighborhoods, the haves, get more and more and more, while communities like mine and yours are getting left behind. I mean, I live in an unincorporated town. I've lived there for 37 years almost. And I certainly understand how ridiculous it is that your kids are waiting in unsafe areas for the school bus and you're destroying your vehicles that you're again paying taxes on streets that aren't being maintained.
Yeah, that is a great question. And as we were just saying here, there is a lot of Kern County, not just inside Bakersfield and not just in the unincorporated areas, the incorporated areas. There's a lot of neglect when it comes to street lighting, when it comes to sidewalks, when it comes to streets. And you know where the neglect primarily is. And I'll tell you, because I live in Tehachapi, I'll tell you where the primary neglect is. And it really just kind of pisses me off. It's in the lower income neighborhoods. They take advantage of the people that don't have a voice. And that's what really just upsets me. And so I'm here on your behalf, whether you're inside incorporated Bakersfield or not. You know, I'm a firm believer, as we were saying earlier, the Parks District and all that, they were absorbed everybody into general services. I'm a believer we should separate that. The parks should have their own division and the roads crews should have their own division. And these road crews should be responsible in developing, maintaining, and building these roads as well as sidewalks. In a city of Modesto, they do it. Why can't we do it here? I mean, we have the funds to do it. There's grants, there's state and federal grants that we can utilize. Why are we not doing it? And why are the people without a voice the ones suffering? We'll get them built for you.
¿Cuál vecindario en Bakersfield? Aquí al este. Okay.
Saute.
Is that
Inclusive
me?
todavía tenemos viviendas usando fosas sépticas.
Mhm. So the majority of street, sidewalk, curb and gutter work that is done with block grant money. So that comes from the federal government. And the county and the city, they put together a calendar years out how they're going to invest money. Someone needs to actually take a look at that calendar and ask why some neighborhoods always get left off, right? And start looking at why are these streets that are forgotten? Because I know that in walking around my district and meeting families, there's streets that haven't been touched for a very long time. There's no lighting. There's absolutely no sidewalk. And so it's a matter of understanding how the system actually gets put into place and then going and fighting for the neighborhoods.
Good afternoon, Ricardo Del Hoyo. I'm here both professionally and personally. I'm a resident of District 3, and a question for these candidates running for supervisor. The county projects a modest 12.4 million increase in revenue compared to the current fiscal year. And when we look at city budgets, at county budgets, if we think of a pie, 50% of that pie goes to law enforcement, goes to public safety. And while we understand that that is important, and that we don't disagree that we need to staff our law enforcement, what are some of other departments when we look at relocation of funds, when we look at divesting on some of that budget and looking at other county departments and how we can help, build community relationship, build, better outcomes and better relationships with law enforcement and other departments that can work together to solve some of these issues in our community.
So I've watched over the last several years watching departments shrink. Specifically, I've worked very closely with the Department of Human Services. I've worked very closely with Adult and Aging Services, and of course also with all areas of public safety. I know the hours that people are putting in. I've talked to the personnel, the employees of the county, and you can hear that morale is low. We need to increase staffing in those service departments. And that's just two examples, because those are directly helping families and individuals. We also have to have a real conversation about why we are not negotiating in good faith with UDW. We need to make sure that we're taking care of people that are taking care of people. And we're failing to do that right now as a county.
So give me 1 second. I want to make sure I put a good thought forward. So the kinds of things that I would like to see us invest in is, I spoke to the heads of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as well as the Black Chambers of Commerce locally. And what they said to me is, Kelly, how come every time the county has grant programs or programs to expand small businesses, we're the last ones to know? And by the time our communities apply, all the money's gone. So I think that we need to focus on that so that we can rebuild your small business. In Kern County, 60% of all businesses closed during the COVID pandemic, and half are expected to never return. And they're not coming from nice neighborhoods, they're coming from neighborhoods like ours that are already gone. So making sure that there's investment for you to rebuild your businesses, so that there's jobs in your community, so that we're affecting things, so that people have money in their pockets. They don't feel the need to go and do things that aren't right. You know, investing in parks and making sure there's opportunities for everybody to move forward and not have to be on the streets messing around. Like I said, my 11-year-old son's here. I don't want him running around, you know, and I don't want yours either. I want your kids to be in a safe place. So those are the kind of investments that I think we need that move us towards community policing and community involvement, so that the best outcomes can be attained.
You know, I'm a big fan of community-oriented policing. When I was a police officer, I wasn't Mr. Graff. I wasn't Officer Graff. I was Pete. Everybody called me Pete. And I think in my heart of hearts, this is it's called a domain. A learning domain is what you learn inside the police academy. I think there needs to be a domain based on this alone, building community relationships. Because what we've done is we've kind of segregated ourselves in this tactical mindset that everybody's out to get us. It's a dangerous world. So you got to understand where these men and women are coming from. So that being said, they also need to learn how to speak and understand the community, because everything's going to vary from every single person. Your budgets, the budgets are going to be responders, they're going to be high, because we have to give them a quality of life. If we don't give them a quality of life, we don't have a quality of life. So we have to make sure that their quality of life is up to par. And as far as the budgets go, parks, libraries, everything else, absolutely. But you know, as police officers, we need to learn how to speak to the community.
Hello, I'm Yasidra Osby, and my question deserves a great answer, so I think one really fast. As a candidate for Board of Supervisors, what is your plan to address active lawsuits against the Kern County Sheriff's Office and reparation, like financial and transformative justice, to the impacted families?
Yeah, so like Pete said, it's important that we start working with our officers and teaching them how to communicate with the people that they're called to protect. So as far as like lawsuits and things like that, I think that we are having an epidemic where we're seeing over and over again officers that are being accused and convicted of malfeasance. So I think we need to make sure that we're working with them. I think what happens is we really cheat our officers by asking them to do too much. And what happens, of course, is the higher stress that they have, they're inevitably, it's a human nature, you're going to take it out on the people that you interact with. So I think by protecting our officers, by making sure there's correct funding, there's enough staffing, that they're not going onto the streets in bad moods. I think an officer in a bad mood on the streets, the worst thing you can ever have. And so that's how I think we should be approaching those things, and just figuring out what's happening exactly. Is it the same officers over and over that seem to be accused of the different things, and figuring out how to not attract that kind and attract officers like this guy. So making them whole, right? Like through the lawsuits, like, I mean, as far as justice goes, because justice isn't punishment, justice is making sure that you're treated fairly. Is that kind of, I just want to make sure I'm answering exactly what you're asking. So as far as that goes, making sure that people who brought forth complaints are being heard, they're being listened to, and they're being investigated, so we can make sure that they don't continue to happen. Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, with those kinds of things, it's again, it's going to the communities, and let's be clear, one way that we help people is making sure that we're not just throwing them in jail, right? I think that we should have the same kind of treatment options for drug abuse and mental health that Chairman Scrivener took advantage of in college when he was arrested for dealing drugs, right? His record's clean. So why, I don't understand how you help somebody and then ruin their record and think that you've done a good job.
Peter. I'm gonna let him drop the mic. That's a great question. Coming from law enforcement, and if you want to research me, you can research my name. I'm actually a wrongfully terminated police officer. And I'll tell you why I was, because I testified at the grand jury about racism and racist comments made by my chief of police in a hostile work environment. I testified about it, and it came out that it was me. So within 6 weeks of that information coming to the police department, I was placed on administrative leave. Approximately a year later, I was wrongfully terminated because I simply went inside there and told the truth. I told that truth because I took an oath. And when I took that oath, I took it to heart. Now, as far as the grievances and civil litigations, when civil litigation goes, we have to put faith in our system. And I know our system is not the best in the world. Well, I take that back. It actually is the best in the world because it does get a lot worse. But we demand more. We demand better. So civil litigation, we have to let it take its course. But I'll tell you this, as a citizen, what we need to do for each area, for each district, for each city, municipality, incorporated, unincorporated, we should all have civil groups that are allowed to monitor and participate in these investigations with any type of criminal activity or civil complaints against police officers. We should have civil groups who volunteer or are involved in the process so that they're informed and they can inform the community.
Thank you. Lewisgale.
Inappropriate activity needs to be held responsible, bottom line. Now, there's so many pieces to this, Cecilia, but I want to speak to a couple that you brought up in your explanation. Untreated trauma echoes through families for generations. And if not addressed, it will continue to express itself in ways that are harmful to that family and to others. And so we need to naturally migrate into that work when people have been harmed. We do not have a good system to be able to do that, and it is an insufficiency. I know that in my work with domestic violence and sexual assault, I know what that type of harm can do to a person long term. But if services are made available, that past does not have to define the future, but we have to be willing to be a part of that solution.
Thank you guys for answering. We're going to take a brief pause. If everyone can take off your headphones so that they can change the batteries out and you guys don't hear the static in your ears. Yeah, take off your headphones. All right, back on.
All right, so I think we're all ready to go, Lori? Yes, we are. Okay. We want to thank all these three gentlemen, but before they go, we're going to give them one more minute to give us basically a closing statement. Gentlemen, so the floor is yours, starting with Lewisgale.
Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening, for this opportunity. It's really important that we actually make ourselves available to the folks that are going to be voting. I can tell you I'm disappointed that there's nobody else here from District 3. I think these kind of questions and conversations we need to answer. My work has always been in the community. It's all I know. It's all I've ever done. All I've ever done is be service. That's all I want to do with this. I don't see it as a career. I see it as a few years where I can try and make change happen. And we have a chance to make a significant impact to the Board of Supervisors over the next couple of years. And so thank you for this opportunity. I hope that I can get your vote.
Peter Graff.
As I stated earlier, being a police officer, I was wrongfully terminated for testifying against racism. And when that occurred, I actually I couldn't get a job. I fell behind in my rent. I didn't have medical insurance. I didn't have money. I didn't have food for my kids. I was on aid, like a lot of people are. I had to take aid. I had to be on, EBT. I had to be on Medi-Cal. So I have the perspective of other people. I know where the county is lacking. I can tell you right now, the housing authority, God bless them. Because you know what? I fell so far behind in my rent, I had to apply for the COVID relief and I was granted it. So I know what things work in this county and I know it's not working. I'll tell you what's not working right now. Adequate law enforcement for you folks, adequate first responder services, adequate roads, adequate lights, street walkways. It just goes on and on and on. But we have the people that are neglected, and that's you guys in these outside rural communities, District 2, us, Boron, North Edwards, and everybody in between too, Bakersfield and the downtown area. I just, I want you to know, I'm sorry, ma'am, I just want you to know that I've been part of it, so I know where it's good and I know where it's bad, and I plan to attack it that way. Thank you.
Kelly Cardin.
So I decided to run last year during the middle of the pandemic when the water bill went up. I thought to myself, I have 4 kids. I have 4 teenagers at the same time. I'm in trouble with water bill coming up. Man, these kids are gonna take long showers. But then I said, it's not that big of a deal. I was 35 years old at the time. I can work as much as I want, make extra money. But what if you were a single mom or dad with 4 kids? There's no extra hours to be worked. I started thinking about what if I was a senior citizen on fixed income and there's no more hours to be worked. And then everything else went up. The trash bill's gone up 3 times in the last 2 years. And I started thinking to myself, and so what happened was that I went to a water board meeting and I spoke out against the increase, and I actually got quoted by the paper. And immediately my neighbors in my community started messaging me, hey, thank you for speaking up for us. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not running because I want to hold elected office. I'm running because I'm sick and tired of my friends, neighbors, and families throughout Kern County being ignored by our elected officials and not being given the time of day, being invited to things like town halls and not having any of the questions answered. It's those kinds of things that decided to make me run. So when you're electing me, all you're doing is electing a mouthpiece for yourself. Thank you.
So I want to give a final thank you to our candidates for the Board of Supervisors. And I want to ask the audience to bear with us for a few minutes as we transition the stage from the Board of Supervisors and bring up Amy Espinoza for the Auditor County Clerk. Sorry, I don't know words. Flag back. Thank you very much. Don't forget to take your flag back. Yeah, I do want to remind everybody that it's not over. So if you would stay in your seats if possible, we're about to bring up Amy Espinoza for the next part. Hey, thank you so much. All right, if I could have everybody take their seats, please, as we're about to get started with Amy Espinoza.
Hola.
All right, everybody, again, if you would take your seats, we're about to get started. Amy Espinoza, thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to introduce yourself if you would like.
Well, hello, I'm Amy Espinoza. I'm running for the office of Auditor, Controller, County Clerk, which also serves as the Registrar of Voters for our county. It is a county-wide position, which means that everyone in the county votes the person into this position. I was born and raised in Kern County. I've lived here all my life. I'm currently the Assistant Auditor, Controller, County Clerk, and I've been in that position since 2019. I've been doing the work, and when my boss decided not to run, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and run. I've been a public servant for 16 years, and even if I don't win, I'm going to move on to another position that allows me to continue my dedication and my career to serving the people of Kern County. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So let's get right down to it, okay? Amy, not many people understand what a county auditor controller clerk is. Please explain this position and what you believe your qualifications are for it.
Okay, so really quick, the auditor controller position, we process payroll for the county, we process accounts payable, we do internal audit of county departments. We do the financial reporting for the county, which is really important when we go out to secure debt to build infrastructure throughout the county. It is very important to our county administrative office. They count on this office very, very much to give them the right numbers and so that the Board of Supervisors can make decisions with accurate numbers. My qualifications, this is the chief accountant of the county, and I am an accountant. I graduated Cal State Bakersfield with a degree in business administration with a concentration in accounting. I've worked as an accountant multiple years. I worked as a budget analyst in the county administrative office. And again, now I am the current assistant auditor, controller, county clerk, registrar of voters.
What are your plans to increase access to voting in the county, including rural areas that currently have limited options? For example, East Kern County, California City only has the option to vote at their local library.
California City?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it is difficult in our county. Our county is over 8,000 square miles. And so the logistics of having an election and making sure that we have polling sites available to everyone in the county poses a challenge. During the 2020 election, we started satellite sites, and we're going to do that in November as well to go out to the outlying communities before the election and set up a day site, or we're hoping to get at least a couple in the outlying areas so that voters who want to come in early to drop off their ballot, or they lost their ballot and they need a reissue, have somewhere to go instead of having to come in all the way to Bakersfield. And voter education. We need more people out in our outlying areas to understand the process, and we need poll workers, and those are volunteer positions. And so by, I think, educating our voters in those outlying areas by looking for ways to extend our office out to those outlying areas, even if it is on a temporary basis just before an election. I think it's really important to make sure that, I really do believe that it's really important that every person who is eligible to vote is able to cast their ballot.
Next question, Amy. Some have suggested that the elections department be its own separate department, alleging that quote, widespread voter fraud has happened in Kern County. Do you agree that the elections department, or what would you say to that should it be its own separate department?
So to start with that, I'm kind of Switzerland in that it is a lot of work, and it is the work of the elections department is outside of the normal work of the auditor controller, which is an accounting office and finance related. However, I do think that the integrity of the auditor controller's office and the independence that auditors are trained in is very important and does bring a heightened qualifications, I guess, to the office of elections. As far as the widespread voter fraud, I've worked in this office for almost 3 years, and I have not seen it, nor have I seen any evidence of anything. No evidence has been brought to our office. There have been allegations made to the district attorney. We've never had charges brought against us. So there's not widespread fraud in our office.
What are your plans to ensure that people in the county jail facilities and on probation or parole have access to vote?
So we do have a program that people who are incarcerated or on parole, they are allowed to vote per state law now. And so in accordance with law, we do reach out even to people who are incarcerated and to make sure that they are eligible to vote, and we make sure every eligible voter has that opportunity.
Next question. The April 5th meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors was removed by YouTube for disinformation related to elections and voting. How do you plan to address the problem of election and voting disinformation in Kern County?
Well, one of my, I guess, platforms is, oh, there it is. One of my platforms is voter education. I just really, really believe that the more people are educated on the process, the more trust they can have. It bothers me that so many people don't have that trust. I just think it's really important, and I think that it's important when someone goes to drop their ballot off, they have confidence that that ballot is going to be properly processed and that their voice is going to be heard.
All right. And what are the main problems you would face in this position, and how would you address them?
Well, one of the main problems is those who say there's a lot of voter fraud. It does take a lot of time to address those concerns, but I do think it's important to make sure that the community, again, has faith in the system. Something else we are facing is shortages in staff. And this position is not an administrative position. I can tell you, before I came here, I was doing accounting. You know, when we're short-staffed, myself and even my boss, who is the auditor controller, we step in, we have to do the debits and credits. We have to look at accounting policy. We have to actually do the work. And I think those are two challenges that, you know, in the auditor controller's office and then in elections.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, we're going to now do some rapid fire questions, okay? So you see there are two cards there, one yes, one no. All you have to do is raise up one or the other, yes or no, whether to answer the questions, okay? All righty, so here we go. Question number 1. Do you support the statewide universal mail-in ballot system?
Do you support separating the clerk registrar of voters role from the auditor controller position?
Do you support an independent redistricting commission for Kern County? Do you support an independent redistricting commission for Kern County?
Do you support Kern County becoming a Voters' Choice Act county? If not, that's okay.
Okay. Do you support increasing the early in-person voting in rural areas, even if there isn't already a library there? Okay. All righty, so now we have some questions. Jason is going to be asking some questions. Where is Jason?
All right. Were there any rapid fire questions that you feel you want to explain a little bit further?
Yes, the yes, no. So the vote centers, I think that in concept, they are a good idea because anyone can go to any center anywhere in the county and cast their vote. They don't have to be at their precinct. The challenge with that in Kern County is that we're over 8,000 square miles. So to strategically put these vote centers where people can access them and where everyone can access them, as opposed to going down the street, possibly having to even go to another town or another area of their town that may not be ideal or easy to get to. I think that's the main challenge, and also staffing these vote centers. Right now, we have trouble staffing our poll sites for one day, and these under Vote Center Act, they have to be staffed for 10 days prior to the election, and then including election day. So again, there's pros and cons, and so I think there are definitely positive things. We just have to figure out how we're going to, how we would implement to make sure that everyone can still cast their vote.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Lori Casante, and I am a proud resident of Kern County. The question I have is, Kern County faces many economic hurdles in the coming years as we continue to recover from the pandemic and address climate change. Unprecedented amounts of state and federal funding will be coming through Kern County. What unique challenges might this bring to the position of auditor controller, and how would you address those challenges if elected?
Well, obviously, a lot of money flying around and really rapidly is, it's honestly kind of an auditor's worst nightmare. And making sure that it's going where it's supposed to go. Right now, we are doing a countywide purchasing audit. We're in the middle of that because during the pandemic, we had to lift purchasing card limits for certain county departments because they had to make purchases in order to respond to the pandemic quickly. So now here we are, and we are doing a countywide review of those purchases that they were making during the pandemic. We are also, I have on my desk right now actually an audit of a department that a lot of the money was flowing through. And so we are looking at those departments that had a lot of COVID money flowing through to make sure that those funds were being spent correctly, that the records were there. Our county administrative office, they are very good about tracking, and they've been tracking kind of countywide, but there were a few little programs that didn't come under their umbrella. And so we are trying to make sure that we're looking at those to make sure the money went where it was supposed to go and to safeguard the county, because we don't want to end up in a position where we owe any money back to anyone, because that typically happens years down the road. And that money comes out of, those funds have been spent, so it comes out of taxpayer dollars for the services that they need in the current year.
Thank you. And I know that we have one question remaining, and I'm going to leave it to anyone in the audience who would like to ask it. Voy a interpretar. And we already have interpretation. We're good. So one audience question. We have time for one audience question. Go for it. Sorry.
Sorry. So the position requires 3 continuous years to work as county auditor or assessment auditor, or one of those positions. But according to your records, you've only been in position for 2 years and 8 months. And that was that was at the time of your filing for the deadline for auditor controller. I'm just wondering, does that make you qualified, or since you not did the full 3 years, or?
So there's actually 4 ways to qualify, and that is one of the ways. And that is not the way that I submitted that I qualify. I qualified under having an accounting degree or equivalent, because I have, as I mentioned earlier, I do have my degree from Cal State Bakersfield Business Administration with a concentration in accounting. And then the other part of that is having senior fiscal management experience. So as mentioned, yes, I do have, it was July 2019 when I was appointed to this position. Prior to that, I was a senior fiscal and policy analyst in the county administrative office. So senior fiscal, it describes what I did. And so that senior fiscal requirement is met. So I wasn't just using my time as the auditor controller.
Thank you. And now we want to give you a minute to have any closing remarks.
Well, thank you, those of you who stayed. I just want to leave you with the 3 things that set me apart from my opponent. The first is I have my degree in accounting. I am an accountant. I have worked as an accountant for 16 years in governmental accounting here in Kern County. The second is, it goes hand in hand with that, it's my experience. I've worked on the county's financial statements. I've worked in internal audit. I've worked on the county's budget. I've also worked on other initiatives throughout the county during my time as in the county administrative office. I've developed relationships. I work well with other county departments. I have if you know anyone in the county, you can ask them if they know me. It's usually just fiscal people because I kind of stick to the accountants. But I do love helping people. I love helping people do better on their own. I love teaching. And I love working together with my other county departments. And I think that my job, even though I am doing the numbers in the background, it is so that the people who are providing services to the community are able to continue to provide those services. And the final thing is that I am a passionate public servant. I've never worked in private business right out of school. I was actually a teacher for 1 year. And now, as I mentioned, my career is in public service, serving the community, making sure that whatever part I can play in making sure that the community is getting the services that they deserve, I'm going to continue doing that until I retire. So thank you all.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cecilia Delgado, and I am the community organizer for Bakersfield. And this is?
And my name is Jason Worthen, and I am the community organizer for Bakersfield as well.
Thank you. And at this time, we would like to thank our lovely moderators, Jose and Janelle. They did an excellent job. And of course, we would also like to thank our translators. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Okay, so I do want to remind everyone here that we do have a lot of information at our table. If you, for some reason, are not registered, or if you know someone who is not registered and would like to take some voter registrations with you, you can go to our table and we do have a lot of information there for you. And we would also like to remind you that this is GOTV time, and the foundation
is seeking volunteers to help us go out and get the vote.
All right. Yeah, because we need to know how the candidates are really going to help us on these issues we really care about, like healthcare for all, immigration, housing. You know, these are all issues that really impact us. So, yeah, we need to call them to action.
So please get your phones out right now and take my phone number, because if you have any questions, I can answer any questions that you might have in regards to GOTV. So like I said, there's a lot of information at our table for citizenship, for elections, for everything. And I do want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And please help us get the vote, because people tell me one vote is not going to make a difference, but it sure will. It might be a tiebreaker. And then by not voting, you're allowing the other people to win. So we need to go out and get the vote. And I urge every one of you to ask your neighbors, your relatives, everyone to go out to vote. It's very important. Sí se puede. So thank you all for being here tonight. And if you have any questions, you can come and see me.